Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of r/ProRevenge. In today's episode, what are you going to do? Sit on me? Okay. Put a lock on our supplies but forget to leave a key for us? Okay, we'll just climb over it. The software does all that now. Okay boss. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. What are you going to do? Sit on me? Okay. My parents used to own a laundromat, and every so often I would help them clean it up / collect the money. They had a seating area with a few benches for customers to sit on, and a few magazines and kids' books to read, generally old stuff that was donated, or from the dollar store. One day we noticed that all the magazines / books were missing, not a huge deal as they were all months old / cheap books, and that happened every so often. So we just refilled the books and cleaned the machines. A few days later it happened again, all the books were gone. Again, a bit frustrating, but not a big deal. We refilled them again and continued cleaning. But then it happened again a few days later, and a few days again after that. We were actually getting low on kids' books, and had to buy some more from the dollar store. My dad and I finally had a look at the security cameras for the last few days, and we saw the same guy came in at about 1 p.m. He was short, bald with a brown coat. He would walk in the front door, go straight to the back, grab all the books, put them in his coat, and then walk out. My dad was pissed. He said he was going to take the day off work to wait for this guy and ask him to not come back. I told my dad I would do it, as this was a side business for him, and I wasn't working at the time. He told me to be stern, but not to hurt him or anything. I was there the next day between 12 to 2 p.m., just before 1:30 I see him. Short, bald, brown coat. Our security cameras weren't the best, so I waited until I saw him grab the books before I walked over, just in case it was the wrong guy who just happened to look the same. But as soon as I saw him start to stuff them into his coat, I walked over. Excuse me. I'm a theater-trained actor, so it boomed a bit and made him jump. Please put those back. He looked at me, and to be honest he didn't look 100% there, but he understood that he had been caught. He spoke softly. I'm sorry, I just like looking at the pictures. I eased back a little. That's fine, you're more than welcome to look at them while doing your laundry, but you're not allowed to just come in here and take them. He put the books back on the table. I'm sorry, he repeated as he quickly walked out the door. He looked like he had gotten the idea. I quickly cleaned up and headed home. We thought that would be the end of it, until the next day when everything was gone again. We checked the security cameras again, and it was him again. This time my dad went on a Saturday, and I saw the camera footage after. Basically the same, but my dad actually reached into his coat and took the magazines out. We didn't have audio, but I could tell he was yelling at him. My dad told me that he told him if it happened again he was going to call the police, and then he asked to make sure the guy understood, which we saw him clearly nod on camera, so apparently he did, and my dad let him leave. A few days later all the books were gone again, and the cameras showed it was the same guy again. My dad actually took a few days off work, and we went all afternoon to the laundromat. We saw him come in once, and my dad yelled at him to leave, basically chasing him out with a broom. Again telling him he's going to call the cops. Finally the day came. My dad and I were there as well as a regular customer. He was a farmer, about 300 pounds. My dad and I went to the restaurant a few stores over and picked up some takeout for lunch. On our way back we saw the laundromat door closed just as we left the restaurant. We didn't think much until we go in, and the guy was back shoving the books into his coat. My dad lost it, and charged at him yelling about calling the police. He turned and looked at us bolting for the door. I quickly blocked him, shoving him backwards. He tried to go a different way around a table, but the farmer was there blocking him. Please just let me leave, he asked. But my dad, who was on the phone, said no, we've given him plenty of chances, and he is going to wait for the police. My dad and I are larger guys, and like I said the farmer was pushing 300 pounds. He looked at us all, and smugly said you can't keep me here. What are you going to do? Sit on me? I heard the farmer say okay as he charged the guy, pushing him back onto the bench, and he sat right on top of him. The guy squirmed a little, but there wasn't much he could do. He yelled for help, but there was no one around but us. The police showed up, and the farmer finally got up. The guy tried to run past the police, but they were able to catch him. Turns out he was known to police because he would steal small things from the other stores around there. He lived in a halfway house nearby, and one of the police who showed up was actually one of his mentors in his spare time. He asked us not to press charges, which my dad said he wouldn't as long as he never came in here again. He agreed, and other than the odd time seeing him walking through the parking lot, he never actually did come back in again. We gave the farmer a free load of laundry as a thank you. And I like to think he taught that guy a valuable lesson: don't mess with fat guys, lol. Oh, my dad was telling me about his call to 911 afterwards. I wish I had a recording of it. He said they said, 911, what is the emergency? And he said I caught someone stealing my coloring books, and the operator paused for a second and said Coloring books, lol. Put a lock on our supplies but forget to leave a key for us? Okay, we'll just climb over it. Hello all you wonderful Redditors. I've posted here before about a story that happened at my workplace last year, and had a brand new story to share. For the record, this wasn't my compliance, but I was the sidekick in this tale. I work at a resort restaurant that's located in the main hotel building on the property. Due to particular things this year I can't say the name of, our resort and restaurant as a whole have had to go through a lot of changes and needed to adapt to a lot of new and different things. We've also been losing a lot of employees, and it's been affecting our performance and overall motivation. As a result, the resort hired a new head manager for the restaurant, Samuel, to manage the chaos. Samuel got to work almost immediately, resolving any issues he found or was told about by one of the employees, and made changes accordingly. One of the things he decided to do was put a lock on what we in our restaurant all lovingly refer to as the cage. The cage is basically a couple tall shelves surrounded by an iron bar fence and gate that housed all our paper supplies like to-go boxes, cups, and bags, along with a few miscellaneous things like crayons and such. Samuel worried that leaving it unlocked the whole time looked unprofessional and people could easily steal some of our supplies whenever they wanted. He told us during a meeting that he'd give keys to each of the managers so any of them could unlock the cage if we needed to get in. I was really skeptical of this idea and worried that it could lead to issues. For one, the managers at my workplace tend to have the ability to teleport, meaning they vanish 99% of the time you need them, and you don't know where they are. Sometimes, they'd all be unavailable because of a meeting or something, and you'd have to wait or find an alternative answer if one existed. Samuel assured me that I wouldn't need to worry, because he'd have a key everywhere in that case. Well, I asked the boss so. About a week or so later, I was working the night shift on a Wednesday, and was anxiously counting down the minutes till closing. It had been an incredibly slow day, so we didn't have much staff on duty, and we only had one manager on duty, Jerry. Jerry is not one of our main managers but manages a neighboring department and has helped us a lot when we're short-staffed or if a manager isn't available. He's a lot like our former boss, kind, patient, organized, and a bit goofy, so we all get along with him. Jerry had also been absent from work for the past couple months, with he revealed he had spent on medical leave. He had been in a bad accident and broke 3 ribs, but despite being well enough to work, there was still a little pain, or so I remember. An hour before we were scheduled to close, Jerry asked me to start restocking our EXPO station's paper goods, so we wouldn't have to worry about it later on. I nodded and headed towards the cage to collect the supplies. Well, what do you know? The cage is locked. Guess I'll have to ask the manager like Samuel said I'd need to. I told Jerry about the lock and said I needed the key to get in. He was silent for a moment before he turned to look at me with a face that I can only describe as a mix between irritation and disappointment. I don't have one, he said in a sigh. Samuel said he was going to give me one, but he never did, and I completely forgot until now. He rubbed his head, and we both walked to the cage. As he stared at the heavy-duty lock and chains, he told me to go to loss prevention, our security department, and ask them for the spare key they should have. I did as I was told and left him scratching his head while studying the gate intensely. Unfortunately for us, no one was home. The door was locked up tight, and you couldn't see any lights on through the windows aside from the TV monitors that played camera footage. It was likely that all the loss prevention officers were busy doing tasks around the resort property. There was no way of knowing where they were or how long they'd be gone for. I've seen times when they'd be gone for hours, and tonight, we only had less than one before we really needed to close up everything. Again, it was a slow day and we all wanted to go home as soon as possible. I relayed the news to Jerry and he just sighed again, looking up and down at the cage with a forlorn look. At this point, I think any normal person would just say heck with it and walk away. It wasn't like we needed to restock that night and could in the morning when Samuel would be there. If we just explained the situation to Samuel, he may have been understanding about it. Not Jerry though. Jerry was determined. No lock in the world was going to keep this man from his destiny of obtaining the priceless paper and or plastic goods beyond that metal prison. Not even his recovering ribs would stop him. At that moment, Jerry made the executive decision that if we couldn't go through the gate, he was going to go over it instead. The thing about the cage is that the fence is basically just iron bars running horizontally and vertically about 2 inches apart, so basically there's enough room for a foot to fit in. The fence was also about 6 feet tall, and there wasn't a roof covering it. Needless to say, it was possible to jump the cage's fence, but it would be difficult and dangerous. I tried to stop him, offered to do it in his place. I'm 5'23", and probably wouldn't have an issue, but eventually caved in and helped where I could. With a few makeshift platforms, collaboration, and a conveniently placed stepladder, Jerry had managed to get in and out of the cage, and we had obtained our paper goods. I convinced Jerry to leave the stepladder inside as I was feeling petty and thought it'd be funny for someone to ask why it was stuck in there. Jerry told Samuel everything the next morning as they shared the same shift. Jerry said Samuel wasn't mad, just a bit surprised and a little apologetic. I wasn't there to see it, but I think Samuel got the message, and since then, we haven't had issues with the keys. Never underestimate the power and determination of a restaurant manager and his petty sidekick. Till next time, y'all. Peace. The software does all that now. Okay, boss. Many moons ago, before the '08 recession, I, manager of the records department, among other things, worked in an industry where record keeping is super critical. Bad records mean no more business because one of the many government agencies would shut you down, sometimes permanently. My direct boss, who reported to the CEO, was a good enough person, but was overworked and would grab onto any idea as long as it kicked the can down the road, at which point the problem was worse. He needed to go, but the CEO liked the results despite how negatively they impacted production and morale. In short, my boss had to go away, and I needed to be the one reporting to the CEO. So I waited until he grabbed onto an idea so terrible that it had to exploit it. My boss came in and told me to stop the record keeping, all of it. He told me the salesperson for our software provider informed him that the software could do all of it. My boss was even kind enough to send me a direct email stating all of this. I called my team in and told them the news. We were all horrified and knew this would come back to bite us all. The software in question could do the job, but it was never set up or configured to meet the requirements. I had already spoken to legal and our government contacts a few months earlier about having software to do this, and we are required to inform them and submit samples of it prior to going live. None of that was ever done. So we kept doing our job as normal, and strangely no one asked any questions until the quarterly meetings. My boss apparently had not informed the CEO on his plan, and instead decided to show the cost savings he had implemented at the quarterly meeting. Thankfully our accountant was a sharp-eyed person, and she immediately started questioning things. From the information I received from other folks who were in the meeting at that point, the accountant asked how it was possible, and my boss confidently told them he stopped the record-keeping requirements and the software was taking care of it all now. The IT people, who knew what was required to be complaint, apparently created a sound akin to a record needle scratch. IT stated we were months from implementation. Legal chimed in and pointed out that we were now in a serious bad legal position. The CEO turned white before assuming a wondrous red tinge. Much shouting was then heard. Apparently the salesperson told me it would work was not a good excuse. Suddenly my phone rings and it is the CEO. I am ordered to the conference room. I smile, grab my folder of evidence, inform my team I might not be back, and it's been fun, and walk towards my fate. I walk into a scene I would like to have taken a picture of. The CEO, legal, and IT are up in arms. My boss looks defeated because he now understands how big the issue is now. I grab a seat and listen to the lamenting of the masses. When it is my turn to talk, I calmly explain my side of things. The CEO loved the direct email from my boss telling me to stop record keeping. After letting that sink in, I calmly told them of my insubordination for the good of the company, the uninterrupted status of the record keeping, and how we were not in a pile of trouble, but in fact were 100% compliant. There was a collective sigh of relief. I then told them moving forward I would like to be out from under my boss management and would prefer to report directly to the CEO. To my surprise they agreed, and within the week my boss was moved to places he could inflict less damage while having more eyes on his actions. Look at me, I'm the boss now. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.